this scene, we can see the most recent offspring from the Roland family, nestled comfortably alongside its elders. The evolution of the technology is so profound, we could even describe them as its ancestors. Here, in their natural habitat, it becomes clear how the concept of a synthesizer has developed over the past 4 decades. The newborn has a completely different form factor, housed as it is in a battery-powered small desktop unit. It hardly takes up any room in the studio and is a truly portable device. Unlike its older siblings that are power-hungry analog beasts with full-sized keyboards and a raging hunger for space on these racks, the latest addition to the family is fully digital and home to 4 synth parts, a rhythm track, and onboard effects. And the Roland family DNA from its forefathers is ever present. It has Juno 106 and SH-101 style oscillators, an Alpha Juno style sawtooth. It's got emulations of choruses from the Junos, the JXs and the C1, as well as tape delays and reverbs from the Integra 7. We've also got classic PCM samples and drum sounds from the vintage 606, 707, 808 and 909. But it doesn't stop there. It's got 9 additional oscillator models and almost 500 drum samples and countless effects, as well as some fun stuff.
So here it is, the Synthesizer 4D from Roland, and you can see by the font and styling that it's harking back to those classic monos like the SH1, the SH2 and the SH9. And after playing with this for a few weeks, it really does have a bit of a vintage vibe to the way you approach it. It's got really simple synth architecture that does feel like the vintage units I've got in the studio. It's got nothing in here that's too overcomplicated, and I have to say it really has worked its charm on me. This one was sent by Roland, so thanks very much, but they don't have any say in the content. They've got no idea what I'm going to think, although anyone that's watched this channel will know I'm fond of vintage Roland kit, as you saw in the intro, of a fair few bits and bobs in here. Plus I do like creating my own tones, and I do like a nice knobby interface. So I guess Roland were on safe ground sending me this, because it turns out it's right up my street. Its main unique feature, I suppose, is that its synth architecture has got different models, including an SH1 and a Juno 106. There's the SH1. There's the 106. So one of the first things I did when I got this out of the box, had a little play with it, I put it up against a couple of my vintage units. And they're not absolutely identical to the vintage units. The filter is the same on every model. It was designed specifically for this unit, so it's not emulating the 101 or the 106 filters, but it gives enough of the sort of limitations and characters of the originals to get close enough, and more importantly, give the right flavour. But that's only half the story, because this has also got a sequencer in it with 4 parts, 1, 2, 3, 4, and a rhythm track. And the rhythm track's more flexible than I originally realised, as every sample has got access to its own synth parameters, so you can independently tweak the filters, tweak the envelopes, the levels, the FX sends and stuff for each one of the drum tones. And we've even got in here sort of really standard tones. So with the oscillators that we've got in here, sorry, the envelopes that we've got in here, we can start creating our own synth tones, our own synth drums. And another really neat thing is that you can mute all the different tones on the fly. So if I hit pattern, load in page 5, number 5, I'll just mute all the other parts. And then we can mute the drum sound individually, so just a really nice little performance tool. And we've got 8 pages, going to pattern, got 8 pages, each with 16 different patterns, but we've got no song mode. However, the beauty of this is the ease of accessing the parameters on the fly and tweaking a pattern to within an inch of its life. So if we play that, let's bring these back in. So these are acting as mutes. Get rid of a couple of the drum parts. Edit part 1. Bring in part 2. Bring the kick in. Hi-hats. Part 3. So you get the idea, loads of flexibility, loads of stuff that you can do as you're doing a performance. So you don't really need the song mode, but if you're a fan of song modes, it hasn't got one. So let's quickly run through the interface. We've got 2 main modes. We've got edit mode, so we're editing the synth tone. We can see there we've got the oscillator up, and we've got pattern mode. And in pattern mode, as you saw there, we can mute the different tracks. We can change the levels of them. The timbre mode in here adjusts the drum level. If we go back into edit mode, we're editing the synth at the minute. If we go into rhythm mode, we're editing the kit. And I think there's 481 different samples in here. So you're not just stuck with those 606s and the 707s and the 909. Plenty of other bits and bobs in here. So if you're playing live, you'd edit the synth tones in edit mode, and when you go into pattern mode, you're then adjusting the levels. You saw me doing all that in that little demo. And you'll find you use this shift button a lot. You saw me there picking the different parts of it, part 1, 2, 3, 4, or the rhythm part. And if you notice down here, part 1, part 2, part 3, the rhythm, all these things are accessed using the shift. So if we go to the LFO, for example, we're in the LFO menu. You've got rate, sync, key trigger, LFO. We've got initialize the patch, okay. We've got tempo settings, we've got copy, undo, we've got the utilities, the main menu, and actually everything's basically one menu deep, except for the menu, which has got extra settings in there as well, as you might expect in the main menu. If we press edit, we're now editing the pattern settings. So step length is 0 or 1 to 64. We can see the ones that aren't used. And then we can flick through the pages using this page stroke tie button. You see there we're on page 3 of 4, page 4 of 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Shift's also used to dig into the various effects. So the reverb, you can see here we've got a few reverbs. Got the Integra 7, GS reverb, SRV, shimmer, we've got loads of different things in there. Choruses, CE1, what's that? The SDD 320. We've also got Juno chorus, JV chorus. The Juno chorus also has, if we come down, we've got 1, 2, 1 and 2 together, or the JX choruses, and we can adjust the noise level. I'm just showing you this one because it's an easy one to show you, because there's just so much stuff in here. I think the manual's got about 80 pages of effects. Delays, different types of delays. And then if we go into the main tone parameter, the main tone effects, we've got all sorts of different things in here. As I say, there's 80 pages of them in the manual, so you get the idea. And then a lot of editing you can do with each of those. So you can really dig in deep if you want to, but you've got easy access to a couple of controls and the type with this knob up here. And just to describe what the sort of the setup of the effects are, the reverb, chorus and delay are basically send effects. So each of the 5 parts can send sounds to them. The tone effect is the one particular for the tone itself, and the MFX is for the overall thing, and you can turn the MFX on and off for each of the different drum sounds, and each of the different drum tones you can send a different amount of reverb, chorus or delay. So for example, kick's got nothing on it. Let's stick a big reverb on that snare. And maybe a delay on that hat. Oh, let's turn it the type to on, shall we? So, different amounts of send to each of the effects on each of the different drum tones. Next up, we've got our sound selection menus. So if we're in rhythm like we are at the minute, this is highlighted. We've got our user rhythm kits, or with the preset rhythm kits. So I think there's 49 of them, is there? And if we're in a synth part, we can either look at them as assigned categories, synth, brass, poly, key, etc., or press it again and we're in the models. So this is a SH-4d models, 3D sync, so press it again to get to the next value, either category or model type. And that's it. That's how easy it is to navigate this thing. It's not complicated at all. Once you've played with it for about 5-10 minutes, you've pretty much sorted. So let's load that part again. What was it? Page 5, part 5. Strings down. Mute that. Little beep beep. Mute that. One, so edit that. Just showing you what I did before, really. So we go into hold pattern. While we're holding pattern, we can mute the parts using these buttons as well. So on or off. Turn the strings off. Bring it back in. Press sound in this menu. You can see exactly where we are with everything, and you can see the rhythm up and down there, and the send effects as well. Yeah, all pretty simple. Okay, let's take a slightly more detailed look at the synth architecture, shall we? This section on the right is the same for all the models. The only thing that changes is this oscillator section. So as I said earlier, we've got the same filter for every tone. It'll self-resonate. This will, but only if it's got an input. Let's just initialize the tone. Are we on 1? Yeah, initialize the tone. Oh, yes, I'm sure. Let's turn it up, shall we? Let's change the model, come out of pattern mode. So we're just a single sawtooth there. Now if I turn the resonance up, get that nice sort of gritty sound out of it. But if you turn this down, we don't get the oscillator playing on its own. So it reminds me a little bit of the Jupiter 6. So you can hear it key tracking. And we've got bandpass and high pass. Oh, that's nice, that, isn't it? Oh, it is nice. We've also got a high pass in here as well. Very much like a Juno. And if you did want to do a little bit more tweaking on your EQs, every part's got its own EQ. If we come into here, we've got a pretty flexible amount of EQage going on. Oh yeah, and you can use these arrow keys to do lots of things as well. I'll just come into the rhythm section again. One really cool thing that you can do with these up and down buttons, if I'm holding that, press up. I've now copied that, now pasted it to there. So if you want lots of different, slightly different things on your rhythm, maybe you want a kick that's got no reverb and then a kick that's got a little bit more reverb or some reverb, you can, or you want to adjust the filter on it, you can copy really simply a lot of drum parts across and do different things with each of them, so you can have like a build on a snare or stuff like that. Because you can't use the motion lanes in the sequencer, which I might talk about later, with the synth parts on the actual drums, obviously because you've got 31 drums in there or something, and you've only got 4 lanes of motion. So yeah, to do anything like that, just copy and paste your drums across. Anyway, I am going completely off topic because I'm talking about the synth architecture here. Let's go back into the synth part. So Shift and 1. Got a filter envelope and we've got an amplifier envelope on each of the tones as well. Some of the models have actually got integrated envelopes. If we come to the Cross FM, there's a little envelope in there, but I'll talk more about that later. So 2 envelopes and a single LFO. Again though, if we go back into these models here, on SH-4d we've got an extra LFO. So although it's basically the same on all of them, they do have slight sort of idiosyncrasies on each of the oscillator types. And as we saw earlier, for things like the LFO, we can go in and we can change rate sync on or off, the key trigger, LFO pan depth, phase position. So they've got the LFO pan depth in there, but if we wanted to assign it to anything else, we could go to the matrix. So this makes it a little bit more complex than your standard old vintage analog. It's not massively complicated as far as mod matrix goes. We've got 4 slots and 4 things that we can do on each, but if we wanted to put the LFO, for example, let's assign the LFO to the filter, for example. So where are we? LFO 1. Come down, we'll assign that to the filter. We don't have everything as a destination. We don't have the high pass, for example, as a destination there, but we've got most things. But of course, LFO1 can now be assigned to 4 different things, or 8 different things, because you could still assign it there, but you get the idea. And what's interesting here are the CCs as MIDI sources. If we come up, we've got not every MIDI CC value, but most of them. So you can actually assign a MIDI CC to any of the destinations. And I did this in one of the demos that you'll see at the end, and I did that actually because I couldn't assign the high pass and just basically ran out of fingers to do it. But it just makes it super flexible. If you've got it linked up to your DAW or to any other controllers, you've got all sorts of flexibility there that you don't have on the synth engine itself. So if you do want to get more complex, you can. So let's move over to the star of the show, which I suppose is the oscillator section. Let's exit that. So come over to the SH-4d model, and I have to say this isn't the first time I've actually attempted to demo this, and that's because there's so much in here. I found I was talking through every option, which just took far too long, and then my batteries ran out, and I did it again, the batteries ran out again, and actually don't need to do that. You know, just a quick overview will probably suffice. So the SH-4d has got 4 oscillators, and these buttons and knobs do different things depending on which model you're using. So we can see we've got lots of different wave shapes there, including that's like an alpha Juno saw. Let's just initialize the patch again. Completed. So let's turn the level up and turn this one into the Juno saw. That's actually a sawtooth with PWM. Quite cool. But we've got loads of different wave shapes in there, as you can see. Including the super saw. And they're the same for all of the 4 voices. Then we move to the next model, which is the 3D, and that's the same as the 4D, except for we've got this additional LFO. And this timbre thing changes the LFO to fade, and this changes the rate. So, as I say, every knob, slide and button does something different on each of the models. Moving over to the Synth version. This has got its own little envelope as well. So you're not relying on the amp or the filter envelope for those classic tones. Then the SH-101, these sliders do what you think they might do. Square, sawtooth, sub and noise. And the buttons are really interesting in that this one changes the type of sub. Same options that you've got on the 101, and this changes the PWM to manual. So manual, setting the pulse width or using the LFO. Then the Juno 106, again, all looks familiar if you know your 106s. Buttons turn on or off the pulse or the saw. Little sub, noise, pulse width or the pulse width command. And this changes it from pulse on, pulse off, saw on, saw off. And that changes the pulse width. Change the rate of the LFO. Or we'll go into the LFO, for example, and turn off sync. Okay, back into the models again. Let's exit there. Got a cross FM. We've really simple FM thing. We've got two tones or 2 sources, I suppose, and we can change the waves on that, and the timbre changes the ratio. As I say, just going to flick through these really quickly. Ring mod, change the amount of mod, change the wave shapes, and don't forget we've still got the filter on all of these as well. So you get the general idea, don't you? Wavetable, change the wavetable itself, change the position, or the LFO depth, that one is. This is the position in the wavetable. And then we've got a little envelope in there as well. There's the position, there you go. Change the wavetable itself. Add some LFO. Chords. Got 10 different chords. Change the timbre. Change the sort of inversion of the chord. And of course, in your sequencer, you can change the actual chord itself when you're using motion control or the motion lanes. What else? Oh yeah, drawing. This one's pretty cool as well. So you can draw it. In fact, you can play it. And if we play it, and then we can just tweak it and just up and down, do various things. Got these 4 quarters. We can change the pitch of that change. And then we can go in individually to each of, I think it's 32 steps, and change them. So plenty of fun to be had with that one. Just a single oscillator, or a single voice I should say. But you'll get distinct tones you can't get from anything else. And then finally we've got PCM. We've got 53 PCM samples in here, yeah. And you can blend to 4 of them. So what have we got on 2? Piano, let's change that to something a little bit more tinkly. That's a really unique aspect to this, I think, and I think it's really clever that they've put envelopes in the different models as well, so you're not relying on having lots of different envelopes in the overall synth engine, just in the oscillator section itself. So just a really ingenious way of doing stuff. So that's the overall synth engine. We've looked at the drums, we've touched on the drums, I think we've done them. Should we take a quick look at the sequencer? So let's go into pattern, let's choose page 8, pattern 1, I don't think there's anything in there. And there isn't, so let's start off, let's just add on the beat, let's go into the rhythm part, let's add the hi-hat. And this is just, if we press shift and pattern, we get the step length, the scale and the like, so let's make it into, should just leave it on 16 for now, but we could change it to up to 64, we'll leave it there for now. Holding shift just does it by bar, if you take shift off. Loads of little things like this in here that make life easy for you. Okay, go to the kick. So play live actually, it's shift and start. Now we're recording live. Not quite keen on that sound, whatever it is. Let's change that one. Okay, let's change the tone on that. Well, we're on the synthesized kit at the minute, so exit. Let's just find the standard snare, shall we? Sounds to me like there's some sort of filtering going on. There is. That's better. Okay, let's add a little bit of reverb on there. Don't want it on every beat, so like I showed earlier, we'll copy that, we'll copy it down to there. And on this one, we'll go back to here, we'll take it off there, we'll put this one on there. And on this one, which was the first one, we'll take the reverb off. Record live again. Yeah, sounds all right. Just had a little bass line on there, so shift and 1. So we load the sound into there, look for a bass. So just trying to flick through the categories here. That's brass, not bass. I thought they were all a bit brassy for basses. Looking for the basses. There you go. Yeah, that'll do. Cardinal sin, I didn't press enter. Okay, so back into the sounds again, go back to the bass. That was it, enter. Oh, but I'd recorded it anyway. Maybe let's add something else on the line. What should we add? A little arpeggio or something like that? That, so shift and record. Let's add some motion to that, shall we? Some recording. Now this is an odd one. If we go into the pattern here, motion switches on. I've got to turn it off. In order for it to actually work, so they've just got something backward, a little bug in there. At least I think that's what that means, but it's doing it now anyway. If we go into one of the parts, we can see we've got the note, the gate length, so you can change the velocity, the gate length. You've got an overall gate length you set in utility, I think it is, and then you've got like an offset in here. Then we've got probability. We've got if it's going to be a flam or if you're going to play additional notes in there. It's like a ratchet. So there's the cutoff. We can adjust it manually ourselves if we want. Let's put it right up high there. Do the same on this one. One thing to note though, once you've set it there, it doesn't come back to the normal value, it stays at that value. So if you do set something up and it's staying at a value you don't want it to, you've got on the next step, you've got to drop it back down again. And we can set up to 4 of those, so. Let's just try that. If we go into the steps, we should see that we've got, well, I've recorded 3 in there for hold that step there, and then press the decay. We've added decay in there as well. If I add more, they just ratchet up and you lose the top one. So let's change it. There we go. We've lost the cutoff, so bring it back in. To step edit, press wherever you want to start and press start, and then done. So if we wanted to put something over here, instead of putting a rest in, we will go 11, start. If we want to put a tie in, for example, we just press 14, for example, and then tie, and it just makes it longer. And if we wanted to just get rid of all them, for example, and just show you another way of inputting stuff, so I could press these 3 keys, put them on one. There we go. So put these 3. So yeah, just other ways of doing things. If I hold that and do that. And I've got to do this, remember, I've got to go in and turn the mute switch off. Sorry, the motion switch off. And like I said, you can notice that that's now gone down, so I'd have to take it to the next step and put it back up again. I'll put that one down, bring this one up. So yeah, it remembers where the last thing it was told to do is, so it doesn't move back to its original value. But just something to know if you're getting confused about why it's not doing stuff. Anyway, yeah, I think that covers all the ways of entering data into the sequencer. And in the menu settings, we've also got fun little things like this visual arpeggio. If we go into there, bounce. That's quite fun. And also if I play this, exit. We've got a little motion controller. Which also is a bit of crazy fun that you don't realise it's got when you first get it. Let's go back into these quickly. Shift, menu, Visual Arpeggiator, enter. Let's try Pong. Enter. I've just seen if it worked up and down as well, sideways, but this one doesn't. I was never very good at Pong. Well, I have to say I've really gelled with this. I was a little sceptical at first, you know, just another Groovebox, but the immediacy of editing the tones and the ease of access to all the parameters on the front panel just makes it really quite unique, obviously, especially with this this oscillator section. I really do think it's managed to get a sort of simple vintage vibe into what is a really flexible modern desktop unit. I mean, what could be improved or what was missing? You know, nothing's perfect. From an interface perspective, it would have been good to put the play stop button, this start button, somewhere else, just out of the way, because while I was making my demos that are coming up in a minute, I have accidentally pressed start rather than pattern. Only the once, but you know, if you're in a gig, only the once, it could be the most disastrous time. But I imagine if you get used to playing it a bit more, you know, you're not going to do that. It's not got a song mode, obviously, so you can quickly use up all these pattern slots. 8 pages with 16 on each, that's 128 patterns. So that's a fair amount. Fair few tracks in there you could build, but you know, maybe you'd want a few more, I don't know. And from a sound design perspective, and getting a little geeky, the PWM on the 106, the Juno 106, isn't affected by the delay, the LFO delay or the LFO fade as it is in here, but this one is. It'd be nice to have the option to turn that off on that particular model. And as I mentioned earlier, there's no access to the high pass from the mods section. It did surprise me that I was trying to stick an LFO on that thing, well, one of the tracks that's coming up later, and I couldn't do it. It's not something I do often. I don't know why I was trying to do it, so I'm not going to miss it, but you know, it would be nice if it was there, and also if the LFO type was there as well, with the LFO mode. But you know, I think that's about it for the would be good to have. So there you have it. There's a few sound demos coming up at the end, like I said, so stick around for them. It's just me tweaking patches over a minute or so, just to give a flavour of the tones that you can get from it. And as always, if you found it useful, please share, subscribe, or maybe join me over on my Patreon. So I hope that was of some use to somebody somewhere, and I will see you next time.
If we look closely at if we look closely at this scene, we can see the most alongside its elders, an offspring from the Roland family,
From the Roland family.
If we look closely, see the most recent offspring from the Roland.
Let's look